Hello everybody and welcome to the second video of Flask course, and in this video I'm going to talk about the routes and a few functions and server startups, as this statement or these terms might be very advanced topic. No, it's very easy topic, but instructors are making it advanced. I don't know why. Just they are saying one line and they cover routes and you are not understanding. So that's why you have come up with this video, and might be it might be you're following this course also. So I recommend you to watch my previous video, because I'm going to talk about the terms like clients, servers, that kind of thing in this video also. So I will ask you to watch my previous video also. The link will be in the I button or description down box below, or in the playlist of Flask full course. So as usual, by the way, first subscribe this YouTube channel and press the like button as I speak this kind of very little amount, but I want you to subscribe this YouTube channel. So as usual, without wasting time, let's get into it. So first of all, what is the routes? So for that, I will explain you. Don't see these formulas. Don't see this kind of the or read it down. Don't just listen to what I'm saying here. The best advice to take more of my video is just listen me and see what I'm writing here. Okay? So let's say our client, I will ask you to watch my previous video. I've just told you, and if you know about the servers and clients, then it's okay. Let's say our client is web browser, and web browsers are like Chrome, Safari, Edge, etc. etc. Okay, so let's say our client is a web browser, and let me make a beautiful figure here. So this is my client, which is a web browser. It sends the request to the web server or the servers. It send the request to the web server, and the server turns it out and send it to our application instance, through application instance, which I talked about in my previous video. So that's why I'm telling you to watch my previous video. It is very important, the first video of this Flask course. Okay, so it's application instance, and it's through a protocol, and the protocol is web service gateway interface. Okay, because in previous video I misspelled interface, then interface service, so it's a web service gateway interface. So through a protocol to an application instance, like its server gets a request from client, and then it turns out to the application instance, and through a protocol named the web service gateway protocol. Okay, so now after that, what happens? What happens is that what I've written here. After this all, after the server gets a request and it turns it out to the application instance or an object, then what it does, the application, what it does is that it needs what code to run. After that, it will proceed in the next line, and it wants what code to run for which the URL is requested. So what it does, it keep mapping the URLs to the Python functions, and this might feel very uncomfortable to you. Why? Because when we'll get to code, what we do, we define a function. Let's say index function. We define a function index, and there is some kind of various things like happening there. So what it does, it simply maps the URLs to the Python functions using a decorator. We'll talk about it just in a second. So the association between the URL, I'm not going to touch my computer now, the URL to the Python functions, is known as the routes. Clear? And for more intuition, we'll get to about the code just in a second. But simply understand that after getting the request from the client, let's say web browser, then servers passes a tons of sounds to the application instance, and after that the application instance keeps mapping the URLs to the Python functions, and the association between the URL and Python that handle it is called the routes. And what is routes? It sends the URL to the Python functions. Like, it sends the URL to the Python functions. Okay? Well, let's see code how it is written, and then you will get to more intuition behind that. Okay? So, how we write? We write the code using a decorator. We make a route here using a decorator, and I hope that you might be familiar with decorator. How do we define? We define the decorator by the @app, which is our application instance, dot route, and this /, and then it connects application instance to this URL, to this function. What it means, this is my application instance, and this is my function, and the association between this is this routes. Okay, so what it does, it handles the association between the app, which is the application instance, and the functions. And this function just only returns the hello world. Okay, and what it does, and what it happens when the server simply gives down the kind of protocol through a protocol application, it would trigger this index function, and it would trigger because the first function is going to happening, which is index. It will trigger this index function, and whatever the result is called the response, which the client receives. And again, response is which the client receives. Let's say client search Facebook, and the web browser find the Facebook, and it shows the Facebook to the user, and that's called response that the user has got. Okay, or the client has received. Okay, no worries. So again, the routes are that handles between the association between the application and the functions, or view functions. And what is a view functions? It's a function like index because if the client send a request to the server, then the server trigger out this and then pass it to the application instance. The application instance, what it does, it trigger this index function, and whatever the result in index function, it would be mapped. It would be given as a response to the web browser, and the web browser then shows to the kind of user. Okay, no worries. Very much clear about routes. If you haven't any kind of problem, please feel free to comment down below. I will be happy to answer your questions. Okay. Now we have seen a simple kind of the route, like a hello world. But in Facebook or a LinkedIn or a Twitter, you just see not a linkedin.com. You just also see your name after the semicolon if you have signed up for the LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or Instagram account. Okay, you just see your name, whatever the username is. So Flask also supports this. How it supports? We simply make a route with this kind of decorator, and our function user will take the name and the parameters or arguments. Okay, we'll take arguments like a name. Okay, and just defining, it's a parameter, not an arguments. Okay, so what it does, we just by dynamic URL, and these are called a dynamic because it is taking the argument from the user. Okay, so it's a dynamic URL. Dynamic URL, and it simply returns the hello, and this is the formatting for formatting, and this is the S. This is the percentage name. This is the syntax that we write. Okay, no worries. Is to understand that for that kind of thing you have seen in your journey that using the app.route you just see this something kind of things, something like this. Okay, and it simply defines by the defining parameters, like after the linkedin.com, then user, then your name. Okay, just I've shown you here LinkedIn, then in means India, then your name. Okay, no worries. That we define user and then your name. Okay, so now let's talk about the server setup, which is often used for setting up our server. Okay, so now how do we define that? We define using this, because why we use this kind of thing, because often LinkedIn and Facebook has their own servers and they spend some money, but we are in their development and we don't want to spend say any amount of even a single rupees in their deployment or for a domain name. So we have a development server, which is a local host, which often help us to take it up for absolutely free. Okay, so for using this server setup, so we use this kind of syntax and for defining that kind of server. Okay, so now let's code the things and let's see how actually the things work, and let's create our first application. Okay, so now I'm on my VS Code, and in previous video we have only taught initialization, application instant, and we have also imported. Now it's time for making the hello world. Okay, so for that what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply write I'm going to define a route. So for that, app.route. Okay, and it's simply we just want a hello world. Okay, so for that let's define one more function, index function, which our application instant this would trigger a trigger, and it doesn't take something, it just returns the hello world. It just return the h1 hello. Because hello, you can use HTML in that, no worries. Okay, done. Now what we can do, now we only have set up the hello world. Now we want to show at a website as a local host. So let's set up our server. For that we simply make this kind of thing. I'll explain. If you want to get more in detail, please be sure to comment down below. I'll make the video of this. Okay, app.run, it's always a good practice to debug equals to true. Sorry. Okay, now what we can do, if you are in a VS Code, you can simply click on this run button. You can just click on that. Sorry, okay, you have to give it a double, because we have to give it a double. Sorry. After that it runs. But if you're not on a VS Code, try the other. So you can also run from here. Just go here and just write a cmd, and just use that by just writing python init .py. Okay, after that it will show up to you, and just copy this kind of code from here and just go on, just browse it. Okay, so I'm going to follow this link from here only, so it shows me hello world as a simple application. Okay, so I have just showed you a dynamic URL, so let's make that also dynamic URL. For that, again I'm going to make a route. So after making that, I will say user and the name here, because it's a special dynamic URL, so we define something like that. And after that we define a function, and it takes the argument as a name, and after that it returns the hello, whatever the name of the user is. So I will make an h1 that it looks bold. Okay, hello, %s is the formatting thing, %s, then the name argument. Okay, no worries, very simple. Now we can run, save this, and then it's restarting, and then we can follow along. And if we pass the parameter, if we pass the URL like user, okay, so let's say Ayush, it says hello Ayush. You can also pass different arguments like, what's your name? Let's say your name is YouTube. Hello YouTube. Okay, so I think that's it for this video where we have covered so far, and from the next video we'll go on to the various things like a complex topic, and we'll make a very good application. Okay, so it's our first application. It's very similar. I would recommend you to take a look at my machine learning course playlist, and thank you for seeing this video. I'll be catching you in the next video. Till then, bye bye.